Welcome back to the Talking TV Book Club, y'all. Good morning. I'm reading nice and early. It's peaceful. It's just something about the early mornings. This is my favorite time to be up, and I ain't got to work today, y'all. So, getting this book club episode done. Welcome back. Welcome back. Feels good to be back. I don't have a lot of time today, so I'm going to just do one chapter today, y'all. Don't beat me up. Next week, I'm going to read more like I did one time when I only read one chapter, and then I came back and read like three or four. That's what we're going to do. I ain't got much time today, okay? I'm going to read one chapter. Now, if you're new here, hi. My name is Mashawn. I originally started the Talking ETV Book Club. It was actually YouTube Lives. They all on my channel. I got 4 playlists. Walking Dead is my favorite show of all time. Television history, it's the one, not the two. It's the end all be all. And I read all 193 issues of the comics. So it's really just this thing now where anything that I'm reacting to, I got to read the source material. Like if it calls for it. And obviously the Harry Potter books being so iconic, and I just finished all the Harry Potter movies recently, which those reactions are here on YouTube in full uncut on my site. Always the top link in the description. So yeah, we're reading Harry Potter because like why would we not read Harry Potter? We're on the second book, and so far I like the first book more than the first movie. So we'll see how I feel about the Chamber of Secrets by the time we finish this book. And yeah, let's just get into it. These are yeah, look at my cute book. Look at my cute bookmark. It's a rose. So cute, right? I was looking for that bookmark for so long. I was so happy I actually found it. If this is your first time tuning into the book club, baby, these is reactions. We talking, we figuring it out, we kikiing, we hee-heeing, we ha-haing. Baby, this ain't no read through. That's not what we doing. If I need to know what something is, I'm about to stop. I'm about to Google it. I'm finna laugh. Okay? This is a book club, okay? It's not a read through. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Chapter 9. The Writing on the Wall. Y'all, this the little girl. Y'all remember the little girl that be in the bathroom crying? Her name ain't Mildred, is it? I don't know what that little girl name is. Bless her heart, poor baby. What's going on here? What's going on? Attracted no doubt by Malfoy's shout, Argus Filch came. So that's this goddamn Walder Frey. I'm sorry, y'all. Game of Thrones traumatized me. That man is not Argus Filch. That man is Walder Frey. Do you hear me? Jesus Christ. All my Game of Thrones reactions are on my website too, full uncut. At the time of recording this, I'm all the way up to season 6, episode 9 on my website. And if you've paid attention to my YouTube, you see I just brought it back to YouTube for the first time in 3 years. Season 2, episode 10 went up a couple of days ago. All right, anyway, back to Harry Potter. Look, I might as well just start over. I done went on that little side tangent. I can't even do his voice. Y'all know I usually like to try to do the voices. What's going on here? What's going on? Attracted no doubt by Malfoy's shout, Argus Filch came shouldering his way through the crowd. Then he saw Mrs. Norris and fell back, clutching his face in horror. Oh my God, this when they killed the cat. No, y'all know we don't take cat abuse over here. My cat! My cat! What's happened to Mrs. Norris? He shrieked, and his popping eyes fell on Harry. You! He screeched. You! You've murdered my cat! You've killed her! I'll kill you! August! Dumbledore had arrived on the scene, followed by a number of other teachers. In seconds, he had swept past Harry, Ron, and Hermione and detached Mrs. Norris from the torch bracket. Come with me, Argus, he said to Filch. You too, Mr. Potter. Mr. Weasley, Miss Granger. Lockhart stepped forward eagerly. My office is nearest, headmaster. Just upstairs. Please feel free. Thank you, Gilderoy, said Dumbledore. The silent crowd parted to let them pass. Lockhart, looking excited and important, hurried after Dumbledore. So did Professor McGonagall and Snape. As they entered Lockhart's darkened office, there was a flurry of movement across the walls. Harry saw several of the Lockharts in the pictures dodging out of sight, their hair in rollers. The real Lockhart lit the candles on his desk and stood back. Dumbledore laid Mrs. Norris on the polished surface and began to examine her. Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged tense looks and sank into chairs outside of the pool candlelight, watching. The tip of Dumbledore's long, crooked nose was barely an inch from Mrs. Norris's fur. He was looking at her closely through his half-moon spectacles, his long fingers gently prodding and poking. Professor McGonagall was bent almost as close. Her eyes narrowed. Snape loomed behind them, half in shadow, wearing a most peculiar expression. It was as though he was trying hard not to smile. And Lockhart was hovering around all of them, making suggestions. It was definitely a curse that killed her. Probably the transmorgifin torture. I've seen it used many times. So unlucky I wasn't there. I know the very counter curse that would have saved her. Lockhart's comments were punctuated by Filch's dry, rattling sobs. He was slumped in a chair by the desk, unable to look at Mrs. Norris, his face in his hands. Much as he detested Filch, Harry couldn't help feeling a bit sorry for him, though not nearly as sorry as he felt for himself. If Dumbledore believed Filch, he would be expelled for sure. Dumbledore was now muttering strange words under his breath and tapping Mrs. Norris with his wand, but nothing happened. She continued to look as though she had been recently stuffed. Y'all wrong for doing that cat like that. I remember something very similar happening in Ouagadougou. Yeah, I don't know where in the world that is. I don't even know if that's a real place, said Lockhart. A series of attacks. The full story is in my autobiography. I was able to provide the townsfolk with various amulets, which cleared the matter up at once. The photographs of Lockhart on the walls were all nodding in agreement as he talked. You know, this man always got to make it about himself at the end of the day. He just always has to bring it back to himself. We don't fucking care, Gilderoy. The photographs of Lockhart on the... Oh, I read that part. One of them had forgotten to remove his hairnet. At last, Dumbledore straightened up. She's not dead, Argus, he said softly. Yay, she's not dead. Lockhart stopped abruptly in the middle of counting the number of murders he had prevented. Not dead, choked Filch, looking through his fingers at Mrs. Norris. But why is she all stiff and frozen? She has been petrified, said Dumbledore. Ah, I thought so, said Lockhart. But how? I cannot say. Ask him, shrieked Filch, turning his blotched and tear-stained face to Harry. No second year could have done this, said Dumbledore firmly. It would take dark magic of the most advanced. He did it, Filch spat, his pouchy face purpling. You saw what he wrote on the wall. He found in my office. He knows I'm a... Filch's face worked horribly. He knows I'm a squib, he finished. What the fuck is a squib? It literally say SQIB. Y'all, what the fuck is a squib? I never touched Mrs. Norris, Harry said loudly, uncomfortably aware of everyone looking at him, including all the Lockharts on the walls. And I don't even know what a squib is. Rubbish, snarled Filch. He saw my quick spell letter. If I might speak, Headmaster, said Snape from the shadows, and Harry's sense of foreboding increased. He was sure nothing Snape had to say was going to do him any good. Potter and his friends may have simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time, he said, a slight sneer curling his mouth as though he doubted it. But we do have a set of suspicious circumstances here. Why was he in the upstairs corridor at all? Why wouldn't he be at the Halloween feast? Harry, Ron, and Hermione all launched into an explanation about the Death Day party. There were hundreds of ghosts. They'll tell you that we were there. But why not join the feast afterward? Said Snape, his black eyes glittering in the candlelight. His eyes are black? I didn't know that. I love that, actually, that Snape's eyes are black. Why go up to that corridor? Ron and Hermione looked at Harry. Because, Harry said, his heart thumping very fast. Something told him it would sound very far-fetched if he told them he had been led there by a bodiless voice no one but him could hear. Because we were tired and wanted to go to bed, he said. Without any supper? Said Snape, a triumphant smile slickering across his gaunt face. I didn't think ghosts provided food fit for living people at their parties. We weren't hungry, said Ron loudly as his stomach gave a huge rumble. Now, baby, y'all know them Weasley children always hungry. Snape's nasty smile widened. See, Snape just want them to tell on themselves about what they was actually doing. He know they didn't do that to Mrs. Norris, but he still want them to tell on themselves. I suggest, Headmaster, that Potter is not being entirely truthful, he said. It might be a good idea if he were deprived of certain privileges until he is ready to tell us the whole story. I personally feel he should be taking off of the Gryffindor Quidditch team until he is ready to be honest. Really, Severus? Said Professor Snape sharply. I see no reason not to stop the boy playing Quidditch. This cat wasn't hit over the head with a broomstick. There's no evidence at all that Potter has done anything wrong. Dumbledore was giving Harry a searching look. His twinkling light blue gaze made Harry feel as though he were being x-rayed. Innocent until proven guilty, Severus, he said firmly. Snape looked furious. So did Filch. My cat has been petrified, he shrieked, his eyes popping. I want to see some punishment. We will be able to cure her, Argus, said Dumbledore patiently. Professor Sprout recently managed to do the procedure on some mandrakes. As soon as they have reached their full size, I will give a potion made that will revive Mrs. Norris. I'll make it, Lockhart butted in. I must have done it 100 times. I could whip up a mandrake restorative draught in my sleep. Excuse me, said Snape icily, but I believe I am the potions master at this school. Okay. There was a very awkward pause. You may go, Dumbledore said to Harry, Ron, and Hermione. They went as quickly as they could without actually running. When they were a floor up from Lockhart's office, they turned into an empty classroom and closed the door quietly behind them. Harry squinted at his friends' darkened faces. Do you think I should have told them about the voice I heard? No, said Ron, without hesitation. Hearing voices no one else can hear isn't a good sign, even in the wizarding world. Something in Ron's voice made Harry ask, You do believe me, don't you? Of course I do, said Ron quickly. But you must admit, it's weird. I know it's weird, said Harry. The whole thing's weird. What was that writing on the wall about? The chamber has been opened. What's that supposed to mean? You know, it rings a sort of bell, said Ron slowly. I think someone told me a story about a secret chamber at Hogwarts once. Might have been Bill. And what on earth's a squib? Said Harry. To his surprise, Ron stifled a snicker. Well, it's not funny really, but as it's Filch, he said. A squib is someone who was born into a wizarding family but hasn't got any magic powers. Kind of the opposite of a muggle-born. Wizards. So that's why Filch don't be doing no magic. A squib is someone who was born into a wizarding family but hasn't got any magic powers. So your mom and daddy is a wizard, but you ain't got no powers. Oh, okay. Okay. So when your parents are not magic and you're born a wizard, you're a muggle. Yeah, a muggle-born wizard. That's why they be teasing Hermione, calling her a muggle. And then, so a squib is when your family is magic, but you're not. Okay, I get it. So the opposite of Hermione, basically. Damn, that's actually even worse. Having muggle parents and then being born a wizard, it's like, oh, that's cool as fuck. Like, this was meant to be for me. But imagine your family is magic and then you not. That is actually what a muggle should be called. They need to switch that. Kind of the opposite of muggle-born wizards. But squibs are quite unusual. If Filch is trying to learn magic from a quick spell course, I reckon he must be a squib. It would explain a lot, like why he hates students so much. Ron gave a satisfied smile. He's bitter. A clock chimed somewhere. Midnight, said Harry. We'd better get to bed before Snape comes along and tries to frame us for something else. For a few days, the school could talk a little of something else but the attack on Mrs. Norris. Filch kept it fresh in everyone's minds by pacing the spot where she had been attacked, as though he thought the attacker might come back. Harry had seen him scrubbing the message on the wall with Mrs. Scour's all-purpose magical mess remover, but to no effect. The words still gleamed as brightly as ever on the stone. When Filch wasn't guarding the scene of the crime, he was skulking, red-eyed through the corridors, lunging out at unexpected. This nigga is just stalking the hallways, just jumping out, scaring these kids. That's not funny. When Filch wasn't guarding the scene of the crime, he was skulking red-eyed through the corridors, lunging out at unsuspecting students and trying to put them in detention for things like breathing loudly and looking happy. Ginny Weasley seemed very disturbed by Mrs. Norris's fate. According to Ron, she was a great cat lover. But you haven't really got to know Mrs. Norris, Ron told her bracingly. Honestly, we're much better off without her, Ginny's lip trembled. Stuff like this doesn't often happen at Hogwarts, Ron assured her. They'll catch the maniac who did it and have him out of here in no time. I just hope he's got time to petrify Filch before he's expelled. I'm only joking, Ron added hastily as Ginny blanched. The attack had also an effect on Hermione. It was quite unusual for Hermione to spend a lot of time reading. Yeah, it was quite usual for Hermione to spend a lot of time reading, but she was now doing almost nothing else. That's because Hermione trying to figure out what the fuck going on. Nor could Harry and Ron get much response from her when they asked what she was up to, and not until the following Wednesday did they find out. Harry had been held back in potions. Come on, Snape, hold on. Y'all know Snape be on his bullshit, y'all. Hold on. Harry had been held back in potions, where Snape had made him stay behind to scrape 2 worms off of desks. After a hurried lunch, he went upstairs to meet Ron in the library and Justin Fletchy, the Hufflepuff boy from herbology, coming toward him. Harry had just opened his mouth to say hello when Justin caught sight of him, turned abruptly, and sped off in the opposite direction. Harry found Ron at the back of the library, measuring his history of magic homework. Professor Binns had asked him for 3-foot-long composition on the medieval assembly of European wizards. I don't believe it. I'm still 8 inches short, said Ron furiously, letting go of his parchment, which sprang back into a roll. And Hermione's done 4 feet 7 inches, and her writing's tiny. Y'all know that girl the truth. Where is she? Asked Harry, grabbing the tape measure and unrolling his homework. Somewhere over there, said Ron, pointing along the shelves, looking for another book. I think she's trying to read the whole library before Christmas. Harry told Ron about Justin Fletchy running away from him. Don't know why you care. I thought he was a bit of an idiot, said Ron, scribbling away, making his writing as large as possible. All that junk about Lockhart being so great. Hermione emerged from between the bookshelves. She looked irritable and at last seemed ready to talk to them. All the copies of Hogwarts history have been taken out, she said, sitting down next to Harry and Ron. And there's a 2-week waiting list. I wish I hadn't left my copy at home, but I couldn't fit it in my trunk with all the Lockhart books. Why do you want it? Said Harry. The same reason everyone else wants it, said Hermione, to read up on the legend of the Chamber of Secrets. What's that? Said Harry quickly. That's just it. I can't remember, said Hermione, biting her lip, and I can't find the story anywhere else. Hermione, let me read your composition, said Ron, desperately, checking his watch. No, I won't, said Hermione, suddenly severe. You had 10 days to finish it. I only need another 2 inches, come on. The bell rang. Ron and Hermione led the way to History of Magic, bickering. History of Magic was the dullest subject on their schedule. Professor Binns, who taught it, was their only ghost teacher, and the most exciting thing that ever happened in his classes was him entering through the room through the blackboard. Ancient and shriveled, many people said he hadn't noticed he was dead. He had simply got up to teach one day and left his body behind him in an armchair in front of the staff room fire. His routine had not varied in the slightest sense. That's iconic, actually. Today was as boring as ever. Professor Binns opened his notes and began to read in a flat drone like an old vacuum cleaner until nearly everyone in the class was in a deep stupor, occasionally coming to long enough to copy down a name or date, then falling asleep again. He had been speaking for half an hour when something happened that had never happened before. Hermione put up her hand. Professor Binns, glancing up in the middle of a deadly dull lecture on the International Warlock Convention of 1289, looked amazed. Miss, Granger, Professor, I was wondering if you could tell us anything about the Chamber of Secrets, said Hermione in a clear voice. Dean Thomas, who had been sitting with his mouth hanging open, gazing out the window, jerked out of his trance. Lavender Brown's head came up off of her arms, and Neville Longbottom's elbow slipped off his desk. Professor Binns blinked. My subject is history of magic, he said in his dry, wheezy voice. I deal with facts, Miss Granger, not myths and legends. He continued. No, he cleared his throat with a small noise like chalk snapping and continued. In September of that year, a subcommittee of Sardinian sorcerers, he stuttered to a halt. Hermione's hand was waving in the air again. Miss Grant? Please, sir. Don't legends always have a basis in fact? Professor Binns was looking at her in such amazement. Harry was sure no student had ever interrupted him before, alive or dead. Well, said Professor Binns slowly. Yes, one could argue that, I suppose. He peered at Hermione as though he had never seen a student properly before. However, the legend of which you speak is such a very sensational, even ludicrous tale. But the whole class was now hanging on Professor Binns' every word. He looked dimly at them all. Every face turned to his. Harry could tell he was completely thrown by such an unusual show of interest. Oh, very well, he said slowly. Let me see. The Chamber of Secrets. You all know, of course, that Hogwarts was founded over 1,000 years ago. The precise date is uncertain by 4 of the greatest witches and wizards of the age. The 4 schoolhouses are named after them. Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin. They built this castle together, far from prying Muggle eyes, for it was an age when magic was feared by common people, and witches and wizards suffered much persecution. He paused, gazed blearily around the room, and continued. For a few years, the founders worked in harmony together, seeking out youngsters who showed signs of magic and bringing them to the castle to be educated. But then disagreements sprang between them. A rift began to grow between Slytherin and the others. Slytherin wished to be more selective about the students admitted to Hogwarts. He believed that magical learning should be kept within all magic families. He disliked taking students of Muggle parentage, believing them to be untrustworthy. After a while, there was a serious argument on the subject between Slytherin and Gryffindor, and Slytherin left the school. Professor Binns paused again, pursing his lips, looking like a wrinkled old tortoise. Reliable historical sources tell us this much, he said, but these honest facts have been obstructed by a fanciful legend of the Chamber of Secrets. The story goes that Slytherin had built a hidden chamber in the castle, of which the other founders knew nothing. Slytherin, according to the legend, sealed the Chamber of Secrets so that no one would be able to open it until his own true heir arrived at the school. The heir alone would be able to unseal the Chamber of Secrets, unleash the horror within, and use it to purge the school of all who are unworthy to study magic. There was a silence as he finished telling the story, but it wasn't the usual sleepy silence that filled Professor Binns' classes. There was unease in the air as everyone continued to watch him, hoping for more. Professor Binns looked faintly annoyed. The whole thing is arrogant nonsense, of course. Errant. He did not say arrogant. He said errant. I've never heard that word be used before. I've never even heard that word. Let us Google this, children. Errant. Arrant.
Errant.
So yes, I was pronouncing it right. Complete, utter. Oh, and then the example is what errant nonsense. So, yeah, he's emphasizing what he's saying. The whole thing is errant nonsense, of course, he said. Naturally, the school has been searched for evidence of such a chamber many times. By the most learned witches and wizards, it does not exist. a tale told to frighten the gullible. Hermione's hand was back in the air. Sir, what exactly do you mean by the horror within the chamber? That is believed to be some sort of monster, which the heir of Slytherin alone can control, said Professor Binns in his dry, reedy voice. The class exchanged nervous looks. I tell you, the thing does not exist, said Professor Binns, shuffling his notes. There is no chamber and no monster. But, sir, said Seamus Finnegan. Oh, I think y'all told me it's pronounced Seamus. It's an Irish name. Even though it's literally spelled Seamus. Like the Seamus. But, sir, said Seamus Finnegan, if the chamber can only be opened by Slytherin's true heir, no one else will be able to find it, would they? Nonsense, so flattery, said Professor Binns in an aggravated tone. If a long succession of Hogwarts headmasters and headmistresses hasn't found the thing. But, Professor, piped up Parvati Patil, you probably have to use dark magic to open it. Just because a wizard doesn't use dark magic doesn't mean he can't, Miss Pennyfeather, snapped Professor Binns. I repeat, if the likes of Dumbledore... But maybe you've got to be related to Slytherin, so Dumbledore couldn't, began Dean Thomas, but Professor Binns had had enough. That will do, he said sharply. It's a myth. It does not exist. There is not a shred of evidence that Slytherin ever built such a secret broom cupboard. I regret telling you such a foolish story. We will return, if you please, to history, to solid, believable, verifiable fact. And within 5 minutes, the class had sunk back into its usual torpor. I always knew Salazar Slytherin was a twisted old loony, Ron told Harry and Hermione as they fought their way through the teeming corridors at the end of the lesson to drop off their bags before dinner. But I never knew he started all this pure blood stuff. I mean, well, you know, the Malfoys got to be his descendants because, baby, those are at their core beliefs. But I never knew he started all this pure blood stuff. I wouldn't be in his house if you paid me. Honestly, if the Sorting Hat had tried to put me in Slytherin, I've got on the train back home. Ron is not playing either. Hermione nodded fervently, but Harry didn't say anything. His stomach had just dropped unpleasantly. Harry had never told Ron and Hermione that the Sorting Hat had seriously considered putting him in Slytherin. He could remember, as though it were yesterday, the small voice that had spoken in his ear when he placed the hat on his head a year before. You could be great, you know. It's all here in your head. And Slytherin would help you on the way to greatness, no doubt about that. But Harry, who had already heard of Slytherin's house's reputation for turning out dark wizards, had thought desperately, not Slytherin. And the hat said, oh, well, if you're sure, better be Gryffindor. As they were shunted along in the throng, Colin Creevey went past. Hiya, Harry. Hello, Colin, said Harry automatically. Harry, a boy in my class has been saying that you're... But Colin was so small he couldn't fit against the tide of people bearing him toward the great hall. They heard him squeak, see you, Harry, and he was gone. What a boy in his class saying about you, said Hermione, wondering. That I'm Slytherin's heir, I expect, said Harry. His stomach dropped another inch or so suddenly, remembering the way Justin Fletchy. That name is a tongue twister. Justin Finch Fletchy had run away from him at lunchtime. People here believe anything, said Ron in disgust. The crowd thinned and they were able to climb to the next staircase without difficulty. Do you really think there's a Chamber of Secrets? Ron asked Hermione. I don't know, she said, frowning. Dumbledore couldn't cure Mrs. Norris, and that makes me think that whatever attacked her might not, well, be human. As she spoke, they turned a corner and found themselves at the end of a very corridor where the attack happened. They stopped and looked. The scene was just as it had been the night, except that there was no stiff cat hanging from the torch bracket, and an empty chair stood against the wall bearing the message of, the Chamber of Secrets has been opened. That's where Filch has been keeping guard, Ron muttered. They looked at each other. The corridor was deserted. Can't hurt to have a poke around, said Harry. Y'all, why Harry always gotta investigate? Why this child just can't never let nothing be? This is why he be getting in trouble. Dropping his bag and getting to his hands and knees so that he could crawl along, searching for clues. Scorch marks, he said. Here. And here. Come and look at this, said Hermione. This is funny. Harry got up and crossed to the window next to the message on the wall. Hermione was pointing at the topmost pane, where around 20 spiders were scuttling. Oh my God, I just imagined 20 little black spiders being together in a little clump. Yuck. Apparently fighting to get through a small crack. A long silvery thread was dangling like a rope, as though they had all climbed it in a hurry to get outside. Have you ever seen spiders act like that? Said Hermione, wonderingly. No, said Harry. Have you, Ron? Ron? He looked over his shoulder. Ron was standing well back and seemed to be fighting the impulse to run. No, Ron is literally me, because why are we doing this? No. Oh, wait, I'm on. What's up? Said Harry. I don't like spiders, said Ron tensely. I never knew that, said Hermione, looking at Ron in surprise. You use spiders in potions loads of times. I don't mind them dead, said Ron, who was carefully looking anywhere but at the window. I just don't like the way they move. Okay, me. Hermione giggled. It's not funny, said Ron fiercely. If you must know, when I was 3, Fred turned my teddy bear into a great big filthy spider because I broke his toy broomstick. Damn, Fred. It's not funny. It's not funny. You traumatized Ron for life. I've never had a ridiculously crazy spider story, but spiders are just like absolute. Like, I don't like creepy crawlies, bugs in general. Absolutely not. You wouldn't like them either if you've been holding your bear and suddenly it hit too many legs and he broke off shuddering. Hermione was obviously still trying not to laugh. Feeling they had better get off the subject, Harry said, Remember all that water on the floor? Where did that come from? Someone's mopped it up. It was about here, said Ron, recovering himself to walk a few paces past Filch's chair and pointing. Level with this door. He reached for the brass doorknob, but suddenly withdrew his hand as though he'd been burned. What's the matter? Said Harry. Can't go in there, said Ron gruffly. That's a girl's toilet. Oh yeah, this where the little girl be crying in the bathroom. Oh, Ron, there won't be anyone in there, said Hermione, standing up and coming over. That's Moaning Myrtle's place. Oh, it's Myrtle. I'm talking about that girl name was Mildred. Like, I knew it wasn't Mildred, but I knew it was something with an M. Come on, let's have a look. And ignoring the large out of order sign, she opened the door. And it was the gloomiest, most depressing bathroom Harry had ever set foot in. Under a large, cracked, and spotted mirror were a row of chipped sinks. The floor was damp and reflected the dull light given off by the stubs of a few candles. And burning low in their holders, the wooden doors to the wall were flaking and scratched, and one of them was dangling off of its hinges. Hermione put her fingers to her lips and set off toward the end stall, where she reached it and said, Hello, Myrtle. How are you? Harry and Ron went to look. Moaning Myrtle was floating above the tank of the toilet, picking a spot on her chin. This is a girl's bathroom, she said, eyeing Ron and Harry suspiciously. They're not girls. No, Hermione agreed. I just wanted to show them how nice it is in here. She waved vaguely at the dirty old mirror and the damp floor. Ask her if she saw anything, Harry mouthed at Hermione. What are you whispering? Said Myrtle, staring at him. Nothing, Harry said quickly. We wanted to ask. I wish people would stop talking behind my back, said Myrtle, in a voice choked with tears. I do have feelings, you know, even if I am dead. Myrtle, no one wants to upset you, said Hermione. Harry only. No one wants to upset me. That's a good one, howled Myrtle. My life was nothing but misery at this place, and now people come along, ruining my death. We wanted to ask you if you've seen anything funny lately, said Hermione quickly, because a cat was attacked right outside your front door on Halloween. Did you see anyone here that night? Said Harry. I wasn't paying attention, said Myrtle dramatically. Peeves upset me so much I came in here and tried to kill myself. Then, of course, I remember that I'm already dead, said Ron helpfully. Myrtle gave a tragic sob, rose up in the air, turned over, and dived headfirst into the toilet, splashing water all over them and vanishing from sight. Although from the direction of her muffled sobs, she had come to rest somewhere in the U-bend. Harry and Ron stood with their mouths open, but Hermione shrugged wearily and said, "Honestly, that was almost cheerful for Myrtle. Come on, let's go." Harry had barely closed the door on Myrtle's gurgling sobs when a loud voice made all three jump. "Ron!" Percy Weasley had stopped dead at the head of the stairs, prefect badge agleam, an expression of complete shock on his face. "That's a girl's bathroom," he gasped. "What were you—" "Just having a look around," Ron shrugged. "Clues, you know." Percy swelled in a manner that reminded Harry forcefully of Mrs. Weasley. "Get away from there," Percy said, striding toward them and starting to bustle them along, flapping his arms. "Don't you care what it looks like? Coming back here while everyone's at dinner?" "Why shouldn't we be here?" said Ron hotly, stopping short and glaring at Percy. "Listen, we've never laid a finger on that cat." "That's what I told Ginny," said Percy fiercely. But she still seems to think you're going to be expelled. I've never seen her so upset. Crying her eyes out. You might think of her. All the first years are thoroughly overexcited by this business." "You don't care about Ginny," said Ron, whose ears were now, I bet you they're about to say red, whose ears were now reddening. "You're just worried I'm going to mess up your chances of being head boy. 5 points from Gryffindor," Percy said tersely. Tersely. I've never seen that adjective before. Fingering his prefect badge. "And I hope it teaches you a lesson. No more detective work, or I'll write to Mum." And he strode off. The back of his neck as red as Ron's ears. Harry, Ron, and Hermione chose seats as far as possible from Percy in the common room that night. Ron was still a very bad temper and kept blotting his charms homework. When he reached absently, "Y'all hear my stomach growling? Baby, I got to eat some breakfast." Ron was still in a very bad temper and kept blotting his charms homework. When he reached absently for his wand to remove the smudges, it ignited the parchment. Fuming almost as much as his homework, Ron slammed the Standard Book of Spells Grade 2 shut. To Harry's surprise, Hermione followed suit. "Who can it be, though?" she said in a quiet voice, as though continuing a conversation they'd been just having. "Who'd want to frighten all the squibs and muggleborns out of Hogwarts?" "Let's think," said Ron in mock puzzlement. "Who do we know who thinks muggleborns are scum?" He looked at Hermione. Hermione looked back, unconvinced. "If you're talking about Malfoy, of course I am," said Ron. "You heard him. You'll be next, mudbloods. Come on, you've only got to look at his foul rat face to know it's him." "Malfoy, the heir of Slytherin?" said Hermione skeptically. "Look at his family," said Harry, closing his books too. "The whole lot of them have been in Slytherin. He's always boasting about it. They could easily be Slytherin's descendants. His father's definitely evil, though." "They could have had the key to the Chamber of Secrets for centuries," said Ron, handing it down, father to son. "Well," said Hermione cautiously, "I suppose it's possible." "But how do we prove it?" said Harry darkly. "There might be a way," said Hermione slowly, dropping her voice still further with a quick glance across at Percy. "Of course it would be difficult and dangerous. Very dangerous. We'd be breaking about 50 school rules. I expect, if in a month or so you'll feel like explaining, you'll let us know, won't you?" said Ron irritably. "All right," said Hermione coldly. "What we need to do is to get inside the Slytherin common room and ask Malfoy a few questions without him realizing it's us." "But that's impossible," Harry said as Ron laughed. "No, it's not," said Hermione. "All we need will be some polyjuice potion." "What's that?" said Ron and Harry together. "Snape mentioned it in class a few weeks ago. Do you think we've got nothing better to do in potions than to listen?" muttered Ron. "It transforms you into somebody else. Think about it. We could change into 3 of the Slytherins. No one would know it was us. Malfoy would probably tell us anything." He's probably boasting about it in the Slytherin common room right now. If only we could hear him. This polyjuice stuff sounds a bit dodgy to me, said Ron, frowning. What if we were stuck looking like three of the Slytherins forever? It wears off after a while, said Hermione, waving her hand impatiently. But getting hold of the recipe will be very difficult. Snape said it was in a book called Most Potent Potions, and is bound to be in the restricted section of the library. There was only one way to get out a book from the restricted section. You needed a signed note of permission from a teacher. Hard to see why we want the book, really, said Ron, if we weren't going to try and make one of the potions. I think, said Hermione, that if we made it sound as though we were just interested in the theory, we might stand a chance. Oh, come on. No teacher's going to fall for that, said Ron. They'd have to be really thick. ... And that is the end of chapter 9 of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Y'all, these kids is about to get into some mess. One thing they gonna do is meddle. Ain't that what they say in Scooby-Doo? Like, you meddling kids. Oh, is that Scooby-Doo? But yeah, these kids right here is fearless. Bless their heart. They be doing everything they ain't supposed to be doing, but be saving the whole goddamn Hogwarts. So I ain't mad at it, but yeah, the back. Time for me to get some water, some breakfast, all of that good stuff. Talking ETV Book Club is back every week. We will be taking no more breaks. Okay. And yeah, I'll see y'all next week.